Hi guys, Irina here and welcome back to my channel where I review everything tech. In today's video, let's talk about the Xiaomi 11T. A few weeks ago, I did an unboxing video with this phone. Check it out if you haven't already. But today, let's talk about this phone in more detail, go over the pros and cons of the Xiaomi 11T and see if this phone is any good. So, let's begin. A few words about the design of this phone. This particular unit is in meteorite gray color. You could also get the Xiaomi 11T in moonlight white and celestial blue. This finish has a glossy glass back with these hardly noticeable horizontal lines across the body of this phone. Of course, the Xiaomi 11T is gonna be a fingerprint magnet unless you wear a case on this phone. By the way, this device has got a good weight to it, not too light and not too heavy, it's slightly more than 200 grams. Speaking of design, all the buttons are located on the right side, the volume button and the power button, and here on the power button we have a built-in fingerprint sensor, which I'll talk about later in this video. When it comes to the dimensions of this phone, first of all, the Xiaomi 11T is not a small phone, it's pretty big. For reference, it's slightly shorter than the Galaxy S21 Ultra, which I would say is one of the biggest phones in my collection. The Xiaomi 11T has a 6.67-inch AMOLED display. The display itself is completely flat. It supports 120Hz refresh rate. If you switch from 60Hz to 120Hz on the Xiaomi 11T, you will definitely feel the difference. All the swipes feel so much smoother whether you go through your Instagram feed or your phone's gallery. When it comes to brightness, I would say the display on the Xiaomi 11T is above average, so it's pretty bright. When you use this phone outdoors, you could use the sunlight mode, which actually does make some difference, or if you prefer the automatic brightness, the phone will enable its peak brightness outdoors automatically. When it comes to sharpness, the majority of icons look pretty good. The photo and video content looks just fine. I don't have any complaints here. And let's talk about the display features we get on the Xiaomi 11T. The first one is the anti-flicker mode that helps reduce eye strain by preventing extensive flickering in low light conditions. And my camera picks up this difference very well, but keep in mind that this feature only works with a 60Hz refresh rate. Then we have the familiar reading mode and the screen calibration options that we have on pretty much all of the Xiaomi phones. Next, you could adjust the refresh rate 120 or 60 Hz. Let's not forget that you have an option to enable the always-on display feature and choose between some really fun and nice-looking themes. And that's pretty much it when it comes to display features. Now let's talk about the camera setup of this phone. Here we have a triple camera with a 108-megapixel main camera, an 8-megapixel ultra-wide camera, and a 5-megapixel tele-macro camera. And let's get straight to the photos. From my experience, I've got pretty good daylight photos from the Xiaomi 11T. The only thing, and I've already mentioned it in my unboxing video, is that some of the ultra-wide photos turn out to be somewhat soft. As you can see, it's not terrible, but just not as sharp as it could be. And it doesn't happen with every single shot, but still, more often than not, it's there. A few more daylight photos for you guys. When it comes to zoomed photos, I like that you can easily switch between zoom options 2 times, 5 times, and 10 times. To me, it seems very convenient. Or you could just toggle it here. The zoomed photos are not outstanding in my opinion, but still usable. Now let's talk about night photos. I must say I was pleasantly surprised with the night mode on the Xiaomi 11T. As you can see, I got pretty good night shots. Moving on to the videos. You can shoot up to 4K videos on the main camera of the Xiaomi 11T. However, you're limited to 1080p on the ultra-wide camera. When it comes to stabilization, it's pretty good. Not outstanding since, let's be honest, today we have phones with much better stabilization, but still, I think it's far from bad. And let's not forget that we have the steady video mode for better stabilization, but keep in mind that the resolution will be automatically switched to 1080p 30 frames per second when the steady video mode is enabled. But honestly guys, comparing these two videos side by side, I cannot say we have a dramatic difference in stabilization, and I'd rather shoot in 4K on this phone since the overall video quality is noticeably better. When it comes to night videos, I would say they're quite mediocre. I mean, they look fine when there are a lot of artificial lights, but when it comes to shooting in very low light, the videos are not the best. We get a lot of noise in these videos, and it's especially noticeable if you look at the sky. Speaking of the front camera, the Xiaomi 11T has a 16 megapixel camera and I got pretty good selfies. The only thing I've noticed is that the colors in the photos turn out to be a bit washed out with a slight faded effect. And when it comes to selfie videos, you're limited to 1080p 30 frames per second. And once again, I would say the selfie videos look a bit washed out, and unfortunately, the stabilization is not the best. If I open the camera app, you will see that here you get pretty much everything you need to create different kinds of photos and videos, and even a little bit more than you usually get on the phone, since we get here some extra features like short video, vlog mode, movie effects, long exposure, dual video, and clone. But if you're a Xiaomi user, all of these features must already seem very familiar to you since they've already been presented on the previous models. Now let's talk about the battery of this phone. We have a 5000 mAh battery on the Xiaomi 11T, and I'll talk about the battery life in a minute, but first let's do a charging test. I'm gonna use this 67-watt charger and the cable that I got in the box with my Xiaomi 11T. This phone completely died, so it's off. And let's go. In 15 minutes, we get 55%. In 30 minutes, we have 90%. 99% on this phone. And finally, it takes 38 minutes to fully charge this phone from 0% to 100, which is quite impressive. I like that. When it comes to battery life, it's pretty good. This phone could last you through the day with moderate use. However, at the same time, I have to admit that there are phones with much more impressive battery lives on the market today, so the battery life on this phone is good, but not outstanding. Moving on to the audio of this phone, we have dual speakers here, one on top and one on the bottom. Also, when you're listening to music or watching videos, the sound is coming out from this in-display earpiece as well. So there are 3 sound sources on this phone, which is very helpful if you accidentally muffle one of the speakers with your hand. However, the majority of the sound volume comes from the bottom speaker, so the bottom speaker is the loudest. And in general, this phone can be very loud, and I would say these speakers are some of the loudest speakers on the smartphone I've tried so far. The overall sound quality is pretty good, no complaints here. And in case you're wondering, we have some audio features on the Xiaomi 11T, such as Dolby Atmos and Equalizer, where you could adjust the sound the way you like. For example, add some bass. When it comes to security features, as I previously mentioned, we have a side-mounted fingerprint sensor, and if you've been subscribed to my channel for a while, you probably already know that this location for a fingerprint sensor is one of my favorite. I think it's super convenient, especially if you're a righty, but if you're a lefty, you could use your index finger, which also feels very intuitive. When it comes to how fast this fingerprint sensor is, I would say in general it's pretty fast, especially if you had some app previously opened, you will see it's really fast. However, I've noticed that sometimes this animation with moving apps on the home screen takes some extra time and it could make the whole unlocking process feel a bit slow, but it obviously has nothing to do with the fingerprint sensor. I think this animation is the reason for that delayed unlock, but once again, it doesn't happen every time, but when it happens, it's a bit annoying. Speaking of other security features, you could also set up a face unlock, and while the face unlock on this phone is not considered to be the safest option, it works really fast, 10 times out of 10, no complaints here. Finally, let's talk about the overall performance of this phone. Speaking of the internals, this particular unit has 8GB of RAM and 128GB of unexpandable storage, but there is also a 256GB option. This phone runs on MediaTek Dimensity 1200 Ultra, and I would say so far it's been quite snappy. The gaming experience is practically seamless. I haven't experienced any lags or glitches while playing some of the demanding games. Everything works just fine on this phone, including all the popular apps like Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and so on. Just like on the predecessors, we have some special features on this phone. One of my favorites is the video toolbox that lets you open other apps while you're watching videos, which could be helpful when it comes to multitasking. And also, the game turbo is pretty cool. Here you could open other apps while you're playing. And also, you get some in-game shortcuts. You could clear cache, start screen recording, or take a screenshot. The starting price for the Xiaomi 11T is about $580, depending on the region. And honestly, guys, while there are a lot of things that I love about this phone, I think it's a bit overpriced. Because for me personally, there are always 3 things in the phone that are absolutely crucial for me: camera, the overall performance, and the battery life. And while the overall performance is pretty good on this phone, the camera and the battery life is quite mediocre. So I don't know about you guys, but yeah, I feel like this phone is a bit overpriced, especially when there's so many good alternatives on the market today. And don't get me wrong, the Xiaomi 11T is a pretty good phone, but not for $600. That's all for this video, guys. Let me know what you think about the Xiaomi 11T. If you own this model, please share in the comments your experience with this phone. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.